absolute pleasure. Sinn Bodhi joining me here on Slap News, making your debut. Welcome to the platform. How good is it to be you today, my man?
Oh, it's wonderful to be me today. I'm doing better than I deserve. I'm sitting here covered in dogs. You can't really see, they're off camera. So I will preface apologies in advance that this interview may or may not be riddled with dog barks, cats meowing, chickens clucking, goats goating, and cows mooing. So I'm here on my little funny farm on the edge of Death Valley, about an hour out of Vegas. So they don't care if I'm on a podcast or I'm on a phone call or whatever. That's when they decide to bark it up, cluck it up, and all that stuff. So anyway, so maybe they'll behave, maybe they won't. We'll see. Maybe I'll behave, maybe I won't. We'll see.
Absolutely, man. I mean, I love seeing the personality. How did you get involved with Power Slap in the first place?
So I think, in wrestling speak, the office at Power Slap sort of wanted to, find some crazy characters that were, a little bit adventurous, a little bit flamboyant, that would be good competitors, but also good TV, and I think they wanted to kind of possibly look at some wrestlers. So they kind of thought, well, who's in the trenches, who's at a different show in a different state or different place, different country, different city, different wherever, just about every week, seeing the guys and girls kind of on the ground level. And all signs pointed to this guy. So I think I'm kind of like the Bull Durham of pro wrestling these days, where I travel in and out of a city. I'll do a match, I'll do a seminar, I'll wrestle the local good guy, bad guy, tell him, all right, more of this, less of this, kid, try this, tighten this up, loosen this, da 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 da. And so I'm sort of that wrestling locker room kind of just a player coach, for lack of a better term. And so I know the talent. I know who's got heart. I know who's got skills. I know who deserves opportunities and so forth. So I think they wanted me to bring that to the Power Slap equation, and boom, bada bing, here we are. A really cool meeting with Dana White and his partners. They were all awesome. They were all super passionate, super cool. They want to see Power Slap, just grow and do cooler and bigger things. And so I think we were all crazy, and we all liked each other's crazy, and here we are. So they signed me up, and that was that.
Yeah, I think we're all a little bit crazy, in this sport and pro wrestling as well.
Sure. Yeah, I think you need to have a decently healthy screw loose to be any kind of performer and whatnot. Whether you want to be a rock star or a wrestler or a UFC fighter or a Power Slap competitor or just about any kind of performing athlete. I mean, you got to have some testicular or vagesticular fortitude, so you got to be able to kind of put it out there. And
sure.
And so I was really I had a lot of fun kind of recruiting guys and girls. I still am. I'm constantly looking for new talent to be part of the show. So it's been a really fun adventure, and I could tell you that I've mentioned it a few times, to other people in conversations, like being the guy that is being able to help give out some opportunities was a really cool thing for me, because like as a wrestler, like wrestling and like acting, it's different than hockey or basketball or something where it's not yards run or goals or RBIs or there's no stats really. It's like, well, who's the better actor, De Niro or Pesci? If it's whoever Scorsese wants to kind of put in the lead, right? So wrestling is kind of like that, where does the promoter like you? Does the promoter not like you? There's a whole ton of happenstance that comes along with, getting onto that main stage. Maybe you deserve it, maybe you don't. And sometimes that is irrelevant to who gets opportunities. So I think this being, as we would say in wrestling speak, this would be a shoot, so really, not to be cheesy, but like in this instance with Power Slap, your destiny is literally and figuratively in the palm of your hand. So you win, you win. You don't have to worry about wondering, hey, am I the good guy? Am I the bad guy? Am I going to win? Am I not going to win? Those are all decisions creatively made, in pro wrestling. Whereas this is not that. This is you shoot for the stars and see what happens. So I think that giving opportunities to people to literally put their destiny in their own hands is a really, really cool prospect for me.
Absolutely. I mean, a guy with your experience and the number of touch points that you've had across the pro wrestling scene is paramount. I mean, I heard you on the Chris Jericho podcast, and just quote, I'll loosely quote it. You said you found out really quick who was a pussy and who wasn't.
Sure.
When
Sure.
as reaching out, how many people do you think you spoke to, and how many candidates did you shortlist to put forth to the Brass of Power Slap?
So the Power Slap office asked me to pitch them 100 guys and girls. So I brought them 100 guys and girls, but I probably talked to about 200 guys and girls, some of which were just scared shitless and said, no, thank you. Some thought about it and, mulled it over. And then, and some of them wanted to, and some of them were injured. And due to privacy, I will tell you, and you can use your detective skills, or the fans listening can use their detective skills, but the office asked me to not just pick 100 guys and girls, but kind of pick your top 10 guys and girls in your top picks, so to speak. So the first guy I called was my very first pick that I would have put at the front of that list. We've been buddies for years, but that's totally irrelevant. I just kind of knew him and just knew what kind of a guy he was, and he's a former WWE champion. So I thought that would have kind of brought things to a whole weirder another level. Having a former WWE champ step up to the plate at Power Slap, I thought that would be cool. And he was super into it. He was super down to do it. And then he got excited and went to jiu-jitsu class to kind of, let it out a little bit. And he hurt his shoulder. And so he probably won't be on this season. So hopefully if he rehabs, I mean, he's a hoss. He's just a juggernaut of a human. So maybe he'll rehab in time to come on down the line or whatever. But he was super down to do it. And he was super bummed. And I was super bummed for him, and he was really appreciative of the opportunity and thought yeah, I could do this. And I think just the intimidation factor of seeing a former WWE champion, and not just any sports entertainment guy, no offense, some of them are awesome and some of them are whatever, I'll just say maybe not my cup of tea, but this guy, you'd have to be an idiot to look across from him and not think holy shit, I'm in it up to my ears, So hopefully we'll see. Keep your fingers, keep your slapping fingers crossed, and we'll see if he can't get on for this season or maybe next season. But yeah, and the office loved it. As soon as I pitched him, they were like, "Yep, this guy, we want him." And so that was all set. And then he hurt his shoulder, and bam. So life happens. Yeah, I've had a lot of really interesting conversations with a lot of people, and there were a couple other dudes, a couple of really sort of cult favorite hardcore wrestling guys were super into it, but they're coming off of injuries. So if as they get their act together, so to speak, then hopefully we'll see a couple of those guys, and I think they will bring that sort of fear factor element to the table. If I was just some guy that's just going to start competing at this and is just a human, just an earthling, and just has earthling experiences or whatever, stepping up, I think, against somebody that's comfortable in front of a TV, comfortable in front of a live audience, I think there's a leg up with that. I was at that first combine when I first kind of got hired for the gig, and there was a lot of big, tough dudes there, but a lot of them, as big and strong as they were, as soon as they had to pick up a microphone and talk about themselves, I could hear their knees knocking together, like they were nervous, So most humans, most earthlings are like that. They don't want to speak in public, where I think pro wrestlers, they're used to jumping around in silly, skimpy costumes and being silly and kind of putting it out there. So I think the shameless, confident factor, I think the wrestlers will have to their advantage. But at the same time, when it comes to stepping up to the plate, whoever's got the better swing, that's the one that's getting the W. So there you have it. But whatever's going through their brains, up to the point of contact, I mean, there's a sort of a good mental warfare there.
I hear you.
Sense.
Absolutely. I know you said that you put the list together. You kind of the guys that you wanted. In your top 100, top 10. What was that criteria as you were sitting there before you made the very first phone call? Talk to me about the criteria that you had in your head of what you thought would make a great power slap athlete.
So obviously an athlete that's gonna, tougher athlete that's durable, that's battle tested, that can take a hit, so somebody that can endure physically, somebody that has some personality, that's gonna, endear the fans or make the fans hate them, love them or hate them. As long as the fans are loud, wrestler doesn't care. As long as like the kiss of death for a wrestler is to come out to crickets, but if you're booing or you're cheering, that's loudness, and that's catnip to a wrestler. So I think, love any of the guys or any of the girls, or hate any of the guys or hate any of the girls, they're going to feed off of that. So I think that's something I thought about, like who's got I used to say, like when I, teaching the wrestling classes, like, don't just do the moves, like put some jazz on it. I always think of the Mr. T, like, come on, give me the jazz, Hannibal, so like put the jazz on it. So I'd pick people that I kind of thought had the jazz, and this dude, this number one pick that hurt his shoulder, certainly one of them. Got some really fun, feisty girls. To me, the girls are always meaner than the guys. Like all the guys are like, oh, I don't want to wrestle any of those girls. They're going to kick the crap out of me because they're mean, So a lot of the girls, they've got that fight in them. And so that's good. As soon as, I think the girls have a different kind of vibe of competitiveness. Like they're looking at each other like, I'm going to get that, whatever, where the guys are kind of a little bit more, girls are more like cats and guys are more like dogs. Guys just want to bark and growl and roll around in the mud, and the girls pull out the claws. They're just a little bit more evil about it. So yeah, just long story short, good athletes, durable, battle tested athletes, and people that have some personality that are just going to translate to good TV.
For sure.
And also too, like people that I think are just hardworking people that deserve a good opportunity, and this is exactly that. So
100%.
that was my sort of personal category that is maybe doesn't need to be somebody to think about them stepping up to the plate. But just for me, it was like, yeah, who are some good people that deserve some, wonderful opportunities and stuff. But
for sure, I'm not going to prod too far, but roughly what year was this athlete that you number one called was the, roughly what year was he a champion in WWE?
Well, I can say he still is performing. He's still wrestling. Like there's an age bracket. They essentially wanted 21 to 40, and they said that they'd buffer it to 43 if there was some spectacular element that said athlete, guy or girl, would bring to the table, whether it was a big audience, whether it was some super duper acclaim, like, being a champion of whatever, something, or just having the, it's just something that's going to sort of bring the TV factor, to the table. And so this guy was just under that age bracket. So he's young, and I want to say at his age still, you got a great chance at anyone 21 to 40, no problem. So if there's a couple of hints and everything, and you asked me, I'll give you one super duper ridiculous hint for the wrestling fans. And so again, knock on wood, cross your fingers. I wish him the best health, and whether he ever competes at Power Slap or not, I just hope he's healthy and happy. But I would just say, you asked me if I was Canadian, and I said, yes, I was Canadian born, but I'm a proud dual citizen. So I will just say, we the people. So I will, there's my ridiculous, if you're any kind of wrestling fan, you'll get that hint.
Absolutely. In your talks with the brass of Power Slap, what were some of the biggest things that they wanted to see from recruiting athletes? Because we've talked about this a number of times, where you have like MMA on this spectrum, you have pro wrestling over here. Power Slap kind of exists in the middle in a sense where, obviously the athleticism from both sides, the personality, they want to see more than they do in traditional MMA. Like, how have those conversations gone, and where do you kind of see it fit from, MMA, pro wrestling? Where does Power Slap fit in the middle of both of those?
So I was joking with, again, the office, saying I brought you the circus, like watching these guys and girls roll off the bus into the combine. a lot of the Power Slap and UFC office was just like, this is awesome. Like it was like the Police Academy movie or something, or like the Keanu Reeves Replacements movie or something. Like the bus was shaking and rocking and moving all over the place to get off, and they were loud and playful and fun and crazy. And they wanted a good energy, they want good competition, good TV. They want good warriors, and I don't want to turn Power Slap into pro wrestling, and I don't want to turn UFC or into Power Slap or UFC into pro wrestling or anything. Like, they can all be their own separate things, and I'm very respectful of all of that. I'm not trying to change or demean, wrestling or the octagon or stepping up to the plate. Power Slap, I was just brought on to, put some ketchup on the burger, like give it some fun TV, bring some fun to watch athletes, and so many of those different athletes are different to enjoy, different to love and hate for very different reasons. Some are funny on the microphone, some are just big scary monsters, some are crazy, some are silly, some are sexy, some are creepy. Everybody brings their own flavors. Like, I'm not a Ken and Barbie doll guy. I don't want a whole army of wrestlers that look the same, or a whole army of Power Slap or UFC or anything that looks the same. I'm an individualist. So everybody that I recruited, I think, brings something unique to the table. And so that way, it's like, if you go to, here in Las Vegas, if you go to one of the bajillion awesome buffets, you don't want to see a mile-long row of spaghetti or burgers. You want variety, right? You want all the different stuff, all the different flavors. So whether it's wrestling or Power Slap or anything else, I want to see the variety. I want the different shapes and sizes, the different personalities, all the different food groups. So I'd like to think that's what I help bring to Power Slap.
I hear you. What's your official title with Power Slap?
So, I guess contractually, technically, I'm a consultant, but within that breaks down just so many roles. And I can really more explain it in wrestler speak, where, a talent booker, a producer, a coach, so there's a lot of different, even sometimes more of like a Jerry Maguire, I'm there to field problems and make sure the athletes, understand what's going on, questions are answered, problems are solved, and so forth, so forth. And I just lost you. Corey, where are you? You just faded to black.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah, I'm still here. Let me try to figure out what happened here, but keep going, my man. You talked about the season, to come. What can you share with that as to when we could expect to see this season, and what's it gonna entail?
So hopefully, I'm gonna have a hand in helping putting some of the matches together, because I think I can play matchmaker pretty darn well. Like, I've been a wrestling booker, so I know, I've got the idea of like who would have a good match with who has good chemistry with who. And, it's not just all pro wrestlers. There's plenty of guys and girls on there that are not, but just sizing people up is something I think I can help with. Some of these guys and girls will be on, there you are. Some of these guys and girls will be on the next show coming up on the June 27th. And I think the protocol is first time competitors, they're taped, not live. So I think that is, which to me, honestly, now that I'm just sort of thinking out loud in front of you and all of your wonderful slap happy fans, I think it will be a hindrance to most wrestlers to compete on the taped show versus the live show. And I think vice versa for the new competitors that are non-wrestlers. I think the non-wrestlers it'll be a calmer environment, sort of a more forgiving environment to get their feet wet without a crowd, where the wrestlers want and need the crowd. So like, I had a couple of the guys and girls were like, when they realized that their first showing would be at like pre-taped, they were like, like, man, I want the people there. And I was sort of explained like, well, yeah, it's just to keep people calm while they get their feet wet. I'm thinking that's great for the average bear, for a normal human, for regular earthlings. But I think pro wrestlers, or any performer, any athlete, probably thrives on the crowd. So I think, like, without that without that live audience jazz, I think will hurt the wrestlers. So it'll give a leg up to the normal humans.
I've been there, and I can tell you it is crickets as part of these taped events. So
sure.
Yeah.
Like like for me, I would have to sort of just get in my own head and sort of, I don't know if I can cuss on here or not, but mind F myself into hearing and seeing and feeling what I need to kind of be up in the moment. And I think a lot of them will be like that. But at the same time, they would just prefer, I would prefer if I was going to step up to the plate and I'm out of that age bracket. Like I can't compete. I'm not allowed to compete. I would absolutely compete, but I'm out of that age bracket. You know, I'm nowhere near 43. You know, I'm closer to 103. Just really, 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 really good looking. So you can't really tell, but certainly way over that age bracket. But yeah, I would absolutely do it, and I would certainly feel much more cozy with a screaming auditorium full of people, whether they love me or hated me. They could be booing and whatever. I would eat it up, and I would use it as fuel. And I think all those wrestlers will do that. So I think they'll do great at the pre-tape, but I think they will do excellently when there's a live audience.
Yeah, amazing. What about this sport that makes you believe in it and the prospects of the future of Power Slap? I mean, you seem to be a big advocate for it. I mean, I love your passion that you have, but you know, what about it to you speaks that this is a way forward and something that you want to be part of?
So just trying to think how to say this without being disrespectful to pro wrestling, because I love pro wrestling. Obviously, I grew up loving it. I am a pro wrestler, so I have nothing but love and respect for the industry that gave me a wonderful life and let me see the planet. Without, you know, a buddy of mine, Gangrel, would always say, wrestling owes me nothing. I owe it everything. So having said that, you know, it's athletic and it's dangerous, but it's also fictional. I think cat's out of the bag, you know, with that. I think it's safe to say that it's okay to sort of talk about that in the modern day. And I think the thing that I'm really enamored about Power Slap is it's got potentially all the glitz of pro wrestling, but with legitimacy. Like you don't have to go, hey, Mr. Promoter, sir, am I going to win tonight, or what, or you know, or I got to lay down, or what do I got to do? You know, this is you. Just do you. You go out, swing for the fences, and again, destiny is in the palm of your hand. So, I think just trying to think, like, I think the grandiosity of pro wrestling is amazing, and I think that's what Power Slap has to bring to the table. But I think with the purity of not having the fix in Power Slap, that what you would do, you know, fictionally with pro wrestling. So if that am I making any sense? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
Like the purity of just knowing I don't know who's going to win. You know, just of it being like on the level, as we would say, like it's not bent. You know, so that's super cool.
Yeah. I mean, I think in a lot of ways, I mean, obviously you're talking indie wrestling versus pro wrestling, you know, the legitimacy of that, you know, well,
indie wrestling and pro wrestling, it's the same thing with a higher budget. You know, there's more protocols, there's more red tape. The bigger the company, the more protocols, the more red tape.
Yeah.
But essentially they're both, they're both one and the same as far as physically dangerous stuff. Like in a WWE corral, right, around the ring, like all that heavy rubber padding. It's not concrete, but it's not Nerf either, but it's not as brutal as doing that stuff on a concrete floor, you know, or whatever. But still, you got a 250 pound dude coming down on you the wrong way, or misgauging a potato to the face or something like. Yeah. There's broken necks and torn ACLs and all sorts of stuff left and right in pro wrestling. Again, respectfully, I love it. Yeah. Stepping in the ring every time you think like this could be it, not just a career ender, but you could lose your life in a pro wrestling ring. I guess really in anything, you could walk outside and, I don't know, a toilet could fall out of an airplane and hit you on the head. So you leave your front door and there's always something that could happen, right? And that with Power Slap, that with pro wrestling, that with the UFC, that with anything, be it on the gridiron, being on the ice, being anywhere, being in your car. But I think just the purity of owning that danger, owning that opportunity, getting in front of the people, having a wonderful opportunity for making a good living to feed your family, hunting that fame that there's so many wrestlers or so many just people, performers, actors, athletes are jonesing for, so, and there's just so many good things that could be had at a power slap that I'm super into it. I think it's awesome.
Yeah. Well, where I was kind of going with that was obviously, the medicals, the safety, having the commission involved, all of that leads to, safer, I'll say a safer workplace per se. I know you've said publicly that you believe that the risk or the dangers in pro wrestling are the same in power slap. Can you elaborate on that?
I think they're less at power slap because you're wearing a mouth guard and you're wearing an earpiece. There's very specific rules, do's and don'ts. You got to have your feet flat. You can't palm. You can't cup. You've got to have your hand flat. You've got to give the person a 1 or a 2 or a 3 time heads up to know when it's coming in. So it's not like you're just getting cold cocked out of the blue. There's people there to catch you if you do get clobbered. There's so many things. Like there's never been a broken neck or a torn ACL or this or that in power slap, but that happens all the time in pro wrestling. One of my amazing, super cool students, I'm so proud of her, Zoe Stark. She's one of my girls in pro wrestling, and she just blew her knee out last week in the most awfulest of ways. And she's an awesome athlete. She's an awesome performer, an awesome pro wrestler, an awesome human. And just one of those things, you jumped off the top rope and landed wrong, and ACL, MCL, PCL out the window. So that's going to be a good 6 months to a year. It's not the case in power slap. If you get your bell rung, you get your bell rung. But again, that happens in pro wrestling all the time. So, people are like, oh, slapping, oh, it's crazy. No, it's not. It's not any crazier than anything else. But it's not any crazier than being in a squared circle or an octagon. So it's not any crazier than being on a gridiron, having somebody running full steam ahead at you, trying to tackle you out of your boots, to get that pigskin. A sport is the sport. So I don't know what what's that?
I you'll probably laugh at me. Any wrestling, any pro or amateur wrestling here, and this will probably think it's funny, but I remember the first time that I was in a ring and I went to go in with the ropes into my ribs, and how much that actually hurt running into an actual steel cable. There's not a lot of padding on those cables whatsoever. So
no. Again, it's so weird. So over the years I would do pro wrestling fantasy camps. So I would have, people that, may or may not be athletes, but just most of the time had no business athletically being anywhere near a ring. They were just, it's like a rock and roll fantasy camp. If you got a few bucks and you want to play guitar with Gene Simmons, he'll tell you, oh, you're doing a great job. He'll strum a guitar with you and collect his money and be on his way. So, and I lost you again. Can you hear me?
I'm still here. You're just having camera issues. Keep going.
So, where was I going? The black screen just threw me off. Why was I telling you about that?
You talked about you talk about fans coming to a wrestling camp that have no business being there.
Oh, no, well, so I totally just brain farted and lost my train of thought there. But the fantasy camp was it was my job to teach people that didn't. Oh, I remember. Thank you about the rope, hitting the ropes. So, a lot of the guys or girls that came into the fantasy camp, they would say the exact same thing that you did. They're like, oh my gosh, I didn't believe hitting the ropes are so hard. Or some things they thought would be hard were easy. Some things they thought would be easy were hard. Like pro wrestling in many ways is such an athletic illusion. And hitting those ropes, just because the wrestlers make it look easy, it is certainly not. Whether it's ropes or steel cables, like those dig into your ribs in a way that the average bear would just feel like you're just getting lit up on fire or something. Like, it's very difficult, and getting body slammed in the middle of the ring, let alone on the apron or on the concrete or even in that rubber corral. Nothing pleasant about getting body slammed or clothesline and getting flung to your back because some other monster is, knocking you around. It's very masochistic. It's very like method acting. If that makes any sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm not sorry. I'm having some technical difficulties with my camera here, but one last one for me. As a fellow Canadian,
Yeah.
do you
Yes,
kind
eh?
of hold?
Yeah, eh?
Do you have you kind of hold Canadians in your heart, and how hard do you think it'll be to recruit Canadians into Power Slap?
Well, I think, if they like any certain talent from Canada or anywhere overseas, Mexico, Europe, Asia, wherever, I think, Power Slap and UFC are obviously, huge company. If it's a matter of getting somebody a visa or something like that, I'm fairly certain that can be done. And again, same thing, like when they're going to bring performers over to like Saudi or anywhere else, there needs to be the right paperwork. That it's not an indie wrestling show where you just hop on an airplane and hope for the best. Like all the, the proper protocols and paperwork, and whether it's medical stuff or visa stuff or what have you, like they'll make sure everything is sorted out. But if they want somebody from Canada or anywhere else, if they want somebody, they'll make it happen.
Awesome, Sinn. I appreciate you joining me, my man. And sorry for the technical difficulties. Hopefully this is the first of many interviews that we can have with you.
I would love to do it anytime.
All right. Take care. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, my friend. You be safe and have a wonderful day as well.